The Forgotten Siege. In the heart of a decaying city, where life had long been snuffed out, there stood a crumbling fortress, an old abandoned hospital that had become the last refuge for a small group of survivors. They called it the Haven, though it was anything but. The zombie outbreak had ravaged the world, leaving only ruins and the walking dead in its wake. The survivors, led by Evelyn, a former nurse, had fortified the hospital, making it their stronghold against the relentless undead. The Haven's walls were reinforced with whatever the survivors could find: scrap metal, old furniture, anything to keep the zombies out. But the dead were relentless, and the survivors knew their refuge wouldn't hold forever. Supplies were dwindling, and each trip outside to scavenge was more dangerous than the last. Worse, the zombies were changing. They weren't just mindless anymore, they were becoming more organized, more determined, as if something was guiding them. Evelyn was the glue holding the group together. She was resourceful, brave, and she knew the hospital's layout like the back of her hand. But even she was starting to lose hope. The nights were getting longer, the attacks more frequent, and the survivors more desperate. One stormy night, as the wind howled outside, Evelyn gathered the group in the hospital's basement, where they had set up a command center. It was a grim meeting. "We can't stay here much longer," Evelyn said, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "The supplies are almost gone, and the zombies, they're not acting like they used to. Something's wrong." Marcus, a former soldier with a haunted past, nodded in agreement. "They're getting smarter, or someone's making them smarter. We need to find a way out of the city, head north to the mountains where it's safer." The others murmured in agreement, though fear was etched on their faces. Leaving the Haven meant facing the unknown, but staying meant certain death. After some discussion, it was decided. Marcus would lead a scouting party to find a way out of the city, while Evelyn stayed behind to prepare the others for the inevitable exodus. The next morning, Marcus and two others set out, slipping through a hidden exit in the hospital's basement. The city was a desolate maze of collapsed buildings, abandoned vehicles, and hordes of the undead. The rain pounded the streets, masking their movements as they crept past the zombies that roamed the ruins. For 2 days, the survivors in the Haven waited anxiously for Marcus's return. The radio they used to keep in contact crackled with static, but there was no word. Tension filled the hospital like a thick fog, and every creak of the building sent hearts racing. On the 3rd day, the radio finally came to life. Marcus's voice crackled through, strained and full of dread. "Evelyn, we found a way out, but it's worse than we thought. There's something leading them. They're gathering, hundreds, maybe thousands. We need to leave now." Evelyn's heart sank. She had suspected something was different about the zombies, but this confirmed her worst fears. Whatever was controlling the undead was herding them toward the Haven, ready to crush the last bastion of life in the city. But even as Marcus's message came through, the attack had already begun. The first wave of zombies hit the hospital with terrifying force, overwhelming the outer defenses in minutes. Evelyn and the others fought back desperately, but the undead kept coming, driven by an unseen force. Amid the chaos, Evelyn made a gut-wrenching decision. They couldn't hold the Haven any longer. She ordered the survivors to retreat to the rooftop, where a rusted helicopter sat, a relic of the hospital's past. It was barely functional, but it was their only hope. As the survivors fought their way up, Marcus and his team burst back into the hospital, bloodied but alive. They joined the final stand, covering the others as they scrambled to the roof. The undead swarmed the building, their numbers overwhelming. Evelyn, Marcus, and a handful of others made it to the helicopter just in time. The engine roared to life, and the helicopter lifted off, the zombies clawing at its skids as they ascended into the stormy sky. Below them, the city was a nightmare, a sprawling mass of the undead, with a shadowy figure watching from the ruins. Whatever it was powerful, and it wasn't finished. Evelyn looked down at the city as they flew north, leaving the haven and its horrors behind. They had survived another day, but they all knew the fight wasn't over. The world had changed, and something far worse than zombies was coming for them. Their journey into the unknown had just begun, and they could only hope that somewhere beyond the mountains, there was still a place where the living could find peace in a world overrun by the dead.